Coordinated universal time. UTC.
Hello, Earth. Welcome to Coordinated Universal Time. There's no easy way to explain the beginning. It's holographic, amorphous, multivalenced. So let us open with some facts. Our mission is to realize a common...
Wait. This is really how we're going to open it?
What do you propose?
Just dive in. Let them figure it out. They're smart cookies. I trust them to fill it in as they go.
Alright. Well, let me just throw the script away. Here's a UTC co-creator Argo Technica with our SEO optimized description.
Coordinated Universal Time is a sonic collage of Fox fireside readings, thinking machines, disembodied conversations, music we found in this world or made in another. Deep time reverberations and field recordings from the front lines of a future held in common. An oral zine, hand-pasted and neural networked by solar golems from the 23rd century, still quickening in the coals of the present. A podcast for now.
I do love that description, Tyler.
Me too. Should we go over the agenda for this episode?
Yes, our first guest is Angel Marcloid. We have an excerpt from our conversation in this episode. Episode 2 will come out right on the heels of this one and contain the full conversation.
And we've also got a reading from Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities by UTC co-creator Not Inferno. This passage has become something of our rally call.
After that, there will be some found sounds and blips from across the internet as well as a long-form essay from Argo Technica.
Almost all the music you hear is original and made by us. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. What am I forgetting?
2 things. Number 1, please sign up for our Patreon to help our mission of realizing a common Earth. You will be invited to our Discord server where you can connect with kindred spirits.
Oh yeah, please do that. We really want to hear from you, especially about your feedback regarding the experimental structure of this episode.
Yes, indeed we do. Number 2, Tyler, I can't believe you forgot about the shard of the origin story you recorded down by the river.
Oh yeah.
Would you like me to play it for everyone?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Playing 2019 05XX UTC Origin Hauntology Intro by River.Wave.
Coordinated Universal Time. Podcast for now. This post has a text mirror on the blog. Back in 2010 or so, a friend sent me a link to the double helix of audio and text that is Adam Harper's Hauntology post. It remains perhaps the single most influential hyperlink ever sent my way. It changed my life in 3 ways. First, it opened my mind to underexplored realms of communication. Harper writes, "Here, you can listen to this blog post as spoken word, and together with the musical examples, this doesn't include the areas about visual art. It remains one of my most inspiring examples of multimedia communication ever." Second, aside from the brilliance of the production value, the content was a revelation. My music has always verged on hauntological, but I didn't yet know it. Suddenly, my art was validated, and I was inspired to continue developing my practice. I was working in a tradition of sorts. Other people were feeling the same things I was feeling. It is quite possible I would have given up had I not found this post. One of the key points from Art and Fear is learning how to not give up. Finally, the post introduced me to Mark Fisher. If you know, you know. If you don't know, please explore his work. I I could never do him justice with a pithy summary here. So, in the spirit of community, of not giving up, of optimism and of curiosity, Coordinated Universal Time is a podcast created by myself and several other artists, writers, musicians, researchers, and similar internet folk. I'm presently armed with a field recorder on the shore of the Fox River in northern Illinois. That lovely ASMR you hear is motorboats cruising down the river and perhaps even some waves lapping up on the beach. There goes a pontoon boat with probably a dozen people, probably all hammered. They waved at me. I couldn't wave back because my hands are full with a field recorder and a iPhone. So our initial idea for this podcast was pretty charged. What would a podcast sound like if it were scored by the Radiophonic Workshop, produced by Mark Fisher, directed by David Lynch, mixed by Wintermute, and hosted by the Monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey? What type of ideas might emerge if we invited people from all different places and times of the world to participate? What new ideas could we expose each other to through this medium? What if it was part sonic collage, part hauntological lunar punk zine, part DJ Mix Fever Dream, part academic forum, part Vox Populi, part weird fungus glowing in the moonlight? Is it possible to sculpt a podcast with a full, wholehearted acceptance of all pretentiousness? Can we gleefully poke fun at ourselves? Can we perhaps even create something beautiful? An on-demand, liminal non-space you can access everywhere? Well, let's find out. If you have any feedback or ideas, please add us. There's also a whole bunch of the usual platforms we're on. It's a podcast for now everywhere. I'll close with a reading from Wikipedia. The official abbreviation for Coordinated Universal Time is UTC. This abbreviation arose from a desire by the International Telecommunication Union and the International Astronomical Union to use the same abbreviation in all languages. English speakers originally proposed CUT, C-U-T, for Coordinated Universal Time, while French speakers proposed TUC for Temps Universel Coordonné. The compromise that emerged was UTC, which conforms to the pattern of abbreviations of the variants of universal time: UT0, UT1, UT2, UT1R, etc. Welcome to Coordinated Universal Time.
UTC.
The final dialogue between Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. The Great Khan's atlas contains also the maps of the promised lands, visited in thought, but not yet discovered or founded. New Atlantis, Utopia, the City of the Sun, Oceania, Tamoe, New Harmony, New Lanark, Icaria. Kublai asked Marco, "You who go about exploring and who see signs can tell me toward which of these futures the favoring winds are driving us?" Polo responds, "For these ports, I could not draw a route on the map or set a date for the landing. At times, all I need is a brief glimpse, an opening in the midst of an incongruous landscape, a glint of lights in the fog. The dialogue of two passers-by meeting in the crowd And I think that setting out from there, I will put together piece by piece the perfect city, made of fragments mixed with the rest, of instants separated by intervals, of signals one sends out not knowing who receives them. If I tell you that the city toward which my journey tends is discontinuous in space and in time, now scattered, now more condensed, you must not believe the search for it can stop. Perhaps while we speak, it is rising, scattered within the confines of your empire. You can hunt for it, but only in the way I have said. Already the great Khan was leafing through his atlas over the maps of the cities that menace in nightmares and maledictions. Enoch, Babylon, Yahland, Buchua, Brave New World. He said, "It is all useless if the last landing place can only be the infernal city, and it is there that in an ever-narrowing circle the current is drawing us." And Polo responded, "The inferno of the living is not something that will be. If there is one, it is what is already here, the inferno where we live every day that we form by being together. There are two ways to escape suffering it. The first is easy for many. Accept the inferno and become such a part of it that you can no longer see it. The second is risky and demands constant vigilance and apprehension. Seek and learn to recognize who and what in the midst of the inferno are not inferno. Then make them endure. Give them space."
UTC.
Welcome to San Jose International, Silicon Valley's airport. In the interest of public health, smoking is not permitted at the airport, except in designated areas located outside at the ends of the building. Thank you for flying SJC.
Altitude 1 hour, 28 minutes. Coordinated Universal Time. Altitude 1 hour, 28 minutes. Coordinated Universal Time.
when you start looking at the real structure and function of the brain, how complex it is, all the supercomputers in the world are still not as complicated as one little human brain, because of all the little points of contact and the way it works. But algorithms are really good at one thing: detouring around the frontal lobe, around the whole neocortex, and getting right to the brainstem. And the brainstem, that yes or no, fight or flight, it's so easy for them to trigger that, which is why what I'm telling people to do now is to remember that every technology, every medium you use is a drug. It's a drug. And Timothy Leary used to say that the internet is as powerful as LSD. It's basically LSD. So if the internet is LSD, we have an entire Western world now living in a psychedelic substrate with no awareness of set and setting, and everybody's having a bad trip. But if you accept that everything that you're using is a drug, I am on Facebook, I am on Twitter. Think for a minute before you go on that drug. Again, we already used to say, before you take a drug, look into the eyes of someone who's on that drug and decide if that's somewhere you want to be. And if you think about it, go to a monastery and you'll see monks there, on vows of silence. They're not on a vow of silence because of ego. Like, I've heard myself talk too much. No, it's because they are acknowledging that language itself is an operating system with biases. It's a drug. Your mind on English, your mind on Spanish. It's a way. Now there's subjects and predicates and objects and verbs. There's nouns. Everything now has become a noun, and it becomes enclosed. They want to experience what is reality like off that drug. So that's, when you realize that, it's like, yeah, they're not that powerful. I'm just drugged.
You just heard field recordings from San Jose International Airport in Silicon Valley, Shortwave Radios, and Douglas Rushkoff at Virtual Futures on YouTube. Next up is an excerpt from our conversation with musician Angel Marcloid. Episode 2 will come out right on the heels of this one and contain the full conversation. Enjoy!
Incredible, just otherworldly. That track is called Celestial Nervous System from the album Bubble Universe, released by Hasu Mountain and created by Non-Local Forecast, aka Fire Tools, aka Angel Marcloid. Like me, she lives in Chicago. We thought it'd be fun to talk about her music, cats, meditation, and a whole bunch of other stuff. We tried to meet up in person, but our schedules kept clashing, so we just did it over the internet. And because we here at Coordinated Universal Time are committed to maximizing your time, we cut out the first 10 minutes or so of the interview. TLDR, I say hello, she says hello, I'm thankful she gave us her time to chat. She's thankful to be here. We both live in the Midwest. No, she didn't grow up here. Well, the weather here is pretty wild. She's excited to move away. Enjoy. Who is your biggest musical influence?
Well, I go through phases, and maybe every 4 or 5 years I feel like a couple of artists are my main influences. But when I was growing up, Rush was a big influence, probably my main influence. I got really, really into Dream Theater. I was way into them. I would say they're probably, besides Rush, the biggest influence. But I went on to play so many different kinds of music that didn't even come close to anything that Dream Theater would ever do. So I don't know if I could say it influences everything, but those two artists have been influencing what I've been doing the past couple of years anyway. And I mostly mean old Dream Theater. I can't quite get into the last decade or so. I like the late 80s and 90s stuff. That's what I connect with the most. Probably same goes for Rush, really, the 80s and 90s stuff for sure.
Where were you when you first heard Dream Theater?
I think I was in my living room, and I think my uncle either made a tape or burned a CD. He was into burning CDs like really early on, like in the CD burning age. He had like a $2,000 CD burner, and I think he made me. I'm serious. It was $2,000. My dad had one at one point too, and when it was a brand new thing, and I remember specifically that it was $2,000. Yeah, it seems so crazy because they're just in our laptops now. You could buy a USB CD burner for like $20, but yeah, it's nuts.
You just triggered my memory of going over to my uncle's house, and he showed me his Laserdisc player, and he only had one. He had one movie. It was Eraser, that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and I remember he told me how much it cost, and it didn't even make sense. This was, late 90s or something. I don't even know when, but
yeah. Laserdiscs were pretty crazy. They're really pretty. When I look at it, I feel like something crazy is happening because it looks like an oversized CD. So I feel like reality is like altered or something.
Yeah, it's a medium from an alternate dimension that's sort of sneaked in.
Yeah.
It's sidechained into ours.
Yeah, it's like when you see like one of those savannah cats and it looks like a domestic cat but like a lot bigger, and you're just like, wait, what's happening? Something's wrong. But yeah, back to that moment. I don't know. I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure my uncle just gave me a copy because he was into getting me into prog, new prog artists. He also got me into Fate's Warning, and they're definitely like one of my favorites as well.
Oh, I haven't heard of them.
They're like I don't want to say a poor man's Dream Theater. That's not true because they can shred too. They really can. I think that they're just like more moody, even. Not as progressive. Kind of darker.
A little more emotive.
Yeah. Oh, they're so great. All of they're probably like early 80s, mid 80s stuff, like into the 90s was all real good.
UTC.
Following is an original essay from Argo Technica. Enjoy.
It's time again to follow Saint Antony into the the desert. But what monastery shall we build there? How do our cells or caves work? The monastery is a precedent preserved in a persistent historical apparatus, including architectures, cultural practices, and so on, designed to link the question of how to make oneself with broader questions about how to make the human world. Rather than say that this monastery should be physical or virtual now, I'd prefer to say that it should be informational, portable, hyperlocal, forkable. Everywhere the internet is, and therefore everywhere capital is, it should be able to exist. It should also be able to exist in places that electronic technologies can't or shouldn't penetrate. Our cells should be similarly understood as nomadic architectures, holons, caves in actual deserts as well as in the desert of the real, hypercaves where we form, where we go to be consumed back into the earth. The holarchical cell is where we read and write, what we read and write with, what reads and writes us. In the monastery is the intentional assemblage of people and their selves. It maintains this foundational commitment to working on oneself with negotiated aid from like-minded peers in service of something larger. What monks tell us even today is that cutting away the frivolous temptations of the world, even if only temporarily, is not done to simplify the spiritual quest, but rather to amplify it, to allow the deepest psychic demons to rise out in their full, terrible strength. Monks speak of praying while sweeping, chopping wood, serving others at table, indeed, praying by doing these things. Praxis extended to every breath and silent word. This organizing purpose at the heart of every monastic community, sealed by its architecture, laws, and culture, is then to center this struggle in negotiated support with others. The centrality of this purpose explains our interest in transposing monastic architectures into the present moment. The system of the world has become a unified stack, in Benjamin Britten's sense of the word, in service to capital. We can engage infinitely in describing and analyzing this stack and designing counter-strategies, but who are we as individuals at the end of the day? How do we become ourselves in spite of and in service to a ruined planet? It seems to me that it's a radical thing to approach with confidence this project of creating a self. If the overwhelming thing now is freedom rather than discipline, then the template of everyone's struggle is to be confronted with infinite possibilities, where positive statements about what one is or should be start to feel like reinscriptions of the old gods of discipline and punish. Even beyond the still useful critique of corporate yoga as putting spiritual practice in service to capital, there's a deeper issue, which is that there doesn't seem to be a more authentic alternative which takes seriously the sustained and arduous project needed to make ourselves better to our full potential. But some project must be possible, some virtues even. Something like Badiou's ethics, for example, is exciting because it points to a deeper conversation than what the notion of ethics now seems to be constrained to propose. But even this is still looking outwardly at society. What the monk asks is, what is my own face, heart, sex, mind in a world that is without these kinds of ethics yet? What voice and handiwork must I assume beyond the external-facing project of creating a more just society? Indeed, the political dimension of the spiritually personal is an important part of two great monastic religions, Christianity and Buddhism, at least in their historical formation. That is, that each represented in the moment of their arrival the articulation of a new operating system, one that consciously sought to create a totally new, in fact totalizing structure on the earth, one in which co-participants can meet each other as equals around a common general project. These were radical political and social projects that reimagined how the people of Earth could relate to each other in terms of new protocols instead of new laws, new design patterns. What this operating system entailed was not so much a list of commandments, after all, but an unlanguageable principle that, once communicated or understood somehow, could, by design, translate or render into distinct, contingent ways of being at a local level. Not laws then, again, but an ethos or spirit. Not a code of Hammurabi, but a code more like the glider in Conway's Game of Life, or like DNA itself. A code which contains multitudes, which generates emergent behaviors and properties through complex interaction with other codes. One perhaps that evolves. Today, this is what capitalist realism is, after all, the religion of the age, and the state religion in precisely the way that Roman religion defined the horizon of all life in its day. So this is what we should seek to build anew, an operating system for the self and for the earth via a network of selves that provides a manner of interface between us which can help us work toward a greater society, and which crucially works for this through formal concern for a kind of governing of the self, or creating of the self. Monasteries are the special case of this system in historical precedent, but not the only. If this praxis should produce anything like formal virtues, my own guess is that they should land at something like this: that the cosmic project of our age is properly one of reinventing the control structures that would allow a more free and intelligent society to steer our shared life on Earth. The desire for AI or blockchains can even be read as a desire for a similar sort of governing structure, but one in which we invent angelic lords to take care of us. In contrast, the monastic urge is to say, shouldn't we want to struggle a bit to stay at the center of our own universe, so to speak? A center which we understand in relation to each other and in relation to the earth, but in which work that we do in our individual caves is the important work to do.
Goodbye, Earth. Thank you for listening to Coordinated Universal Time. We need your support to reach more people like you. Please sign up for our Patreon to help our mission of realizing a common Earth. You will be invited to our Discord server where you can connect with kindred spirits. Farewell.
universal time.